Hi, this is Ed from Wright, and today we're going to talk about how you can increase the profitability of your business significantly by doing a few very simple and basic things. We're going to talk about what's the right number of people per job. One person, two people, three people. What's the dynamic that happens when you change the number of folks you have on a crew? But first, let's talk about profit, how it's made, where it comes from, and all that kind of stuff. So first off, top line is number one. Top line is the biggest number on your statement, and because it's the biggest number, it's the number where a small change will still make the biggest difference. And so that has a lot to do with pricing. Having precise pricing is important, and we'll talk more about that later. Number two, throughput or volume. How many jobs per day are you getting done? The more jobs you get done per day, obviously the more money you're going to make, especially because you're covering the same overheads. Third is your costs, right? Your profit is the gap between your price and your cost. And so when your costs are lower, you make more money. And your number one cost is labor. After that comes things like fuel, equipment, insurance, all down the list. But labor is by far the most significant driver of your costs. Now, the thing about number two and number three is that they're very closely related. So if you save time, you'll get more throughput, and you'll reduce your costs, which are mostly labor. And they're both dependent on the disciplined use of time. So we're going to talk mostly about this today, the disciplined use of time and how you can significantly make more money by looking at that. So when we look at time, route density comes first. I'm an equipment guy. I like selling equipment, but I would say even more than having the right equipment, route density is a bigger factor in your profitability. Be sure that you have your business dialed in to your specific market, that you're only driving a couple minutes between job sites. And I say that is especially true if you're doing residential, because typically residential jobs are going to be shorter time per property. Larger jobs, you can afford to drive a little bit further. Well, after route density, then we talk about job times, right? So labor content per job is really, really important. And just as an example, let's say that you're making a 10% profit after paying yourself, and 3 minutes being 10% of 30 minutes is the difference between making money and losing money, right? So if you save 180 seconds on a job, you'll be able to double your gross profit. If you lose 80 seconds per job, you break even. The thing that often goes unseen is that if you're taking your income from the business and the profit together, this significant fluctuation in your profitability after pay typically goes unseen. And so it probably doesn't get as much attention as it usually should. Okay, so let's get to the question of how many people are the right number of people per a crew. What's the most efficient thing to do here? But to do that, we have to talk about value add time and non-value add time. So value add time is specifically what the customer gets when they pay for your service, right? Which is to mow, to trim, to blow things off and make it look great. So the non-value add time portion here is the time spent driving to the property, transitioning between tasks on the property, the amount of time lost when one person finishes before the other person, and they're idle for a second. That's all non-value added time. Now the thing that's so important about this is that when you have more people on a job site, the value add time doesn't change, but the non-value add time goes up significantly. And so we're going to break that down here in a second. So it's important to think of value add, non-value add time, and the distinction between the when you're on the job, you should be thinking about, hey, where's the non-value add time getting wasted here? How do we reduce it? And a tenacity to always chase that is a huge driver of your success or your profit. All right, so now we have to make a distinction between job time and labor time, right? So how many minutes you're on a job versus how many minutes were consumed to do the job. And the thing about it is that the job time is typically what we feel like the day is slow, we feel like we're getting a lot done, that kind of thing, and it gets a lot more attention. And so oftentimes the temptation is, hey, let's hire another person on the crew, and it really makes it feel like things are picking up speed. But the thing is that the labor hours oftentimes go a lot more unseen, and that's what really matters. That's what matters to your profitability, labor hours per job. And so this thing about non-value add, value add time and the difference between the job time and labor hours has a lot to do with the concurrent and non-concurrent activities. So you can have one person trimming while one person's mowing, but if you're driving there, both people are doing that same thing. So let's look at an example here. So I have a residential job, and we have the value add time portions, right? So we're driving there, pull down the trailer, pull out the first mower. This is value add time. Maybe the second person at the same time has pulled out the second mower and begins, or sorry, we're talking about one person here. So you get there, you mow with the big mower, go out back, you trim a small area with a smaller mower, you got some trimming, blowing, and you're done. This is a 57-minute job, okay? So not a real small job, but also not a huge job. That 57 minutes includes the drive time, about 10 minutes of drive time in there. And this is, I think, around 18 minutes or so of mowing. So our value add time is 36 minutes. Our non-value add time was 21 minutes. And the total labor time, which is equal with one person, labor time and job time are the same number. Now, if we go from one person to two people, now we have two people sitting behind the windshield of that truck. And then we pull down the gate, we unload one mower, one person mowing, the other person mowing. When this small mower is done, then the second person can begin trimming and then start blowing off while this mower gets put away. And then this line here is about a minute to log the job and set up your route to get to the next job if it requires GPS or anything like that. All right, so when we went from one person to two people, see that the value add time is 36 minutes either way. We didn't mow for any longer, we didn't trim for any longer, but the non-value add time jumped from 21 minutes to 32 minutes. And so our total time went up to 72 minutes. That was a 26% labor increase over one person. And so even with two people, you do become significantly less profitable. It's not necessarily a bad thing to have two people, though, because oftentimes you have one person who has more experience. They might be a higher paid person, and then you have someone who's newer with less experience getting paid less. And so with two people working together, you can keep the pace going and take advantage of that factor. Now, when you have three people on the job, then you still have 36 minutes of value add time, but now your non-value add went up to 43 minutes because you have all this time spent on the road, all this time switching between stuff here, and our labor costs went up 68% over one person. So you can see that the more people you have in a job, it significantly increases your labor costs. Now, I have a second example here, and I think it's important to look at both types of landscaping. The first example I had would represent a small or medium-sized residential property, but here we've got a job that's more like a couple hours long, a 200-minute job, and with one person, you spend some time on the road, bunch of mowing, bunch of trimming, and some blowing. If you split it into two people, now you have one person who might be mowing the full time, and the second person mows for a bit and then does some trimming and blowing. The reality is that they're probably going to mow for a little too long, and then this takes a little bit longer, and then this person might be waiting on them a little bit at the end. But anyways, if it's pretty matched up, then there's a 7% increase in the labor content, mostly because of that drive time here. Now, in the other example that we had on a small property, we went up 26%. So 7% is not nearly as bad. And that's part of my point. When you're on larger jobs, you can justify more people per crew. Now, if we go from two people to three people, the non-value add time goes from 32 minutes to 45 minutes, and now our labor cost is 14% over what it would be with one person. And so, yeah, it feels good. We're getting that job done in 75 minutes. There's a lot of energy. We feel the throughput, but if we priced it, as if this was going to happen and we went to do this, we're going to be losing money real quick. Now, the other thing that happens is if you send two crews to do one job, the 75 minutes might come down about half that, a little more than half that, but your wasted time will go up significantly. I would very much discourage you to ever put more than one crew on a job site unless it's a full-day job. Okay, so we talked about the examples there of residential work, there is a huge upside for a work smarter, not harder approach. With route density, there's no issue of choreography really to speak of. I mean, certainly the sequence of work that you might have working alone can increase your productivity, but not like when you have two people. We had the large site example. Large sites are much more dependent on low input costs and not working as strategically on the job site because there's more flat out, steady work of the same thing the whole time. And you want to really avoid having multiple trucks on one job site. The only real advantage to multiple trucks on one job site is if you are short a supervisor, and so if you have one supervisor who's managing several crews at one location at one time, but just know what you're getting into because your labor cost is going up really steeply the more people you have on that job site, mostly because of all the drive time incurred for the shorter time that job is getting done. It's hurting you. Now, one thing you're probably used to seeing in our industry is that in the residential business, there's lots of small business entrepreneurs in this business, and it's a lot of times because there is a real tenacity for the work smarter approach, and you can make really good money doing this, but it's hard to scale. It's very hard to scale this level of detail on how jobs are done. You'll notice that a lot of your national companies or larger landscape companies, they do more work with installs, they do more work with larger sites, that kind of thing. And they're much more dependent on low input costs, economies of scale, these kinds of things, and not so much on working just strategically on that job. And so that's part of the dynamic you see. Large landscape companies with a single formula, small companies with a lot of detail approach. So this choreography is what's critical, and the understanding what happens when you add more people to a crew and its effect on the choreography, its effect on the non-value add time of driving there and that type of thing. I'm sure if you haven't gone through this yourself, you've probably heard it before, that it's really difficult to go from one crew to two crews. And that's just because if that second crew doesn't have that same attention to detail, the same tenacity, same drive to make up the 180 seconds on every job instead of losing 180 seconds on every job, that'll make or break your profit. The other thing that happens is when that second crew is isolated from your personal income, and so it has to stand on its own legs, you'll feel that you're losing money or making money much more quickly than a change in productivity on the crew that you're personally working on, where you're taking a personal income and a profit from it simultaneously. But if that second crew is not aggressively managed, you're going to lose money, or at least break even maybe. And so that's why it's important to have a system, an approach, and a lot of attention to detail before you try to scale. Now, another thing, and I know this is heresy that I'm saying this, but it's important that the most experienced person runs the trimmer. The temptation here is for the new person or the person with less experience or less seniority to be operating the trimmer. But the thing is, when we're looking at a scenario like this with two people working together, somebody with years of experience versus somebody with a couple months of experience, they're going to take almost the same amount of time to cut the grass. But the person who's really driven and has a ton of experience, they can just about have the amount of time spent trimming, especially trimming, and a little bit of blowing. So the person who's doing the trimming is really driving the pace of the job, and they're working on the part that can have the most significant increase in productivity. So by trimming, if you can save 180 seconds through good choreography, and you can save another 180 seconds out of the trimming, you pretty quickly drive up that profitability quite significantly. But this is hard to scale. If you have multiple crews and what's going on with each person using the trimmer versus mower and that kind of thing. But I will tell you, having the most experienced person on the trimmer has a significant impact on your profitability. All right, so the takeaways for today: if you aggressively manage your time, you can be extremely profitable, especially in residential work. if you try to scale and you don't have a system and you don't have driven people, you're going to break even or you may lose money. So it's really, really important that you have great people, driven people, an approach, a process, standards, that you know your job costs, right? So you have to know your costs. And the temptation is to price based on your cost or do cost plus pricing. That's not a very good approach. I'd really encourage you to not do that. What you need to do is price on your market. Know the type of work that you're targeting your business towards. Know where your comps are. When you price, if you're winning every bid, you're pricing too low. You should be getting a certain amount of rejection consistently. If you're maybe getting 50% of the jobs you bid, you might be closer to where you want to be. But price a job expecting to lose the bid half the time. And if you have that discipline, you'll find that it will really increase your profitability. And when you do get those jobs and you did price them higher, you have to follow through on quality. Quality work is so, so important. So price to market. Now, knowing your cost is really important, not to set your pricing, but to know where you need to improve your business. So if you have really good information for each job, how much time you're spending there, your drive time, that kind of thing, you'll know which jobs are your least profitable. I'm sure that if you increase your prices or discontinue business with your bottom 10% least profitable customers, the next day your business will be more profitable. So really work on and address those least profitable jobs, whether they're mispriced or it's just work that's not in line with what you do or in your area. And I think I'd also say here is sometimes you might be doing work that your equipment's not best suited for. And I wouldn't say get more equipment to do every type of job. You really do need to focus your business on a particular type of work, and that's where you'll be most profitable. Now, if you throw more people and more equipment at a problem, it'll slow you down and you're going to make less money. So always first streamline, first work on your efficiency, get structured, and never put multiple crews on a short job or too many people on a crew that's doing short jobs. That's going to really hurt your profitability, even if you don't get into job scripting and this type of detail. Just as a general rule, don't put too many people on a crew or a job site. And then the other thing, because I'm in the equipment business, I have to say that uptime is really important. The opportunity cost of having equipment down hurts painfully, so you want equipment that doesn't require a lot of maintenance, it's very reliable, very durable, all that type of stuff. Also, equipment that's versatile is important. So you don't want more mowers on your truck than you have people. You don't want to haul tons of stuff around, target one type of work, and then within that work, if your mowers can do all the type of work that you encounter, it's a small property, it's very maneuverable, you've got a slope, you've got wide open acreage, you need horsepower. If all of those things are rolled up into one machine, it's a very versatile machine, it'll also help you make a lot of money. And it happens to be that stand-on mowers are some of the most versatile types of equipment and therefore some of the most profitable equipment that you can run. So I hope this is helpful to you. At the end of the day, it's about throughput and your labor cost. And being efficient has a lot of leverage on your profitability. Hope you have a good rest of the season.